Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, I walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed.
Alrighty, let's take a look at homework for lesson 3.2.3. So basically solving linear equation with one variable. These are the steps we've been talking about since 7th grade. First thing you want to do is combine like terms if you can, if you need to. Even before that, if the problem called for it, you might need to send in the dive bombers and use distributive property to get rid of all the parentheses, so then you can combine like terms. So, but generally, with these more simple types of equations, combining like terms starts off, and if you're adding positives to negatives, that's where you make the zeros or remove the zero pairs. Otherwise, you just combine like terms by adding the coefficients of your variable terms together and adding your constant terms together on each side of the equation. So remember, this is critically important. The left side of the equation is an expression that needs to be simplified completely. The right side of the equation is an expression that needs to be simplified completely before you start adding or removing balanced sets. So once you get everything simplified on either side, then you can start removing balanced sets. So maybe take away an x from each side, leaving you with 2 x's, and then take away 2 from each side, leaving you with a -8. And in this case, taking away -2 from -6 is the same as adding -2. I'm sorry, taking away 2 from -6 is the same as adding -2 to -6. So that's why -6 minus 2 is -8. And now you can divide each side by 2, but I like to just think of it logically. What number do you multiply times 2 to give you -8 for an answer? It's -4. So x has to be equal to -4. And then let's not forget, they didn't show it here, but we always want to check to make sure that that is the correct solution. So for the check, I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to say, all right, 3 times -4 would be -12 minus 2 plus 4 needs to be equal to -4 minus 6. Well, -4 minus 6 is the same as -4 plus a -6, so that becomes -10. Let's see if we change this to make this -10. -12 minus 2 is -14, and -14 plus 4 is equal to -10. So yes, -10 is equal to -10. That proves that x had to be equal to -4. All right, so let's put this into practice, solving for x and checking our solutions. Turns out there's no solution for a because 3x minus 7 can't be equal to 3x plus 1. There's no number that would ever make them equal to each other. And when you take away 3 x's from each side, you see -7 is supposed to equal to 1. That doesn't work. That is absolutely not true. So there's nothing to check there because there's no solution. Here, we would add, let's go ahead and show this process here. So you got -2x's minus 5 is supposed to be equal to -4x plus 2. So let's add 4 x's to each side, which you get some zero pairs there, so that leaves you with 2 x's left over. Minus 5 is equal to 2. So now I will add 5 to each side to cancel this out. But whatever you do to the left side, you have to do the same thing to the right side. So this becomes 2 plus 5 is 7. So what do you multiply times 2 to give you 7 for an answer? Well, some of you may have said 3.5. 3.5 would work just fine. I left it as 7 over 2, but 3.5 or 3.5 are also answers that would work there. So do we want to check that? -2 times 3.5 is -7, and -7 minus 5 is -12. And here you end up with -4 times 3.5. So let's just do, what is 4 times 3.5 times 3.5? So that would be -14, and -14 plus 2 is also equal to -12. So are they equal to each other? Yes, they are. We feel confident about our answer. What's happening here? We send in the dive bombers first, so the opposite of x is -x. The opposite of -2 is +2, is equal to x plus 2. At first glance, someone might look at that and say, oh, there's no solution, or maybe there's infinite solutions, but actually there's one solution. because you don't have the same number of x's on each side. That's a negative one, that's a positive one. So if I add x to each side, you now have 2 x's plus 2 on the right, and you've got 2 on the left because these guys canceled each other out. So 2x plus 2, let's take away 2 from each side, and we get 0 is equal to 2x. So what do you multiply times 2 to give you 0 for an answer? X has to be equal to 0. And in this case, when you add the x and the 2 x's, you get 3x's plus 2 is equal to 3x plus 2, or 2 plus 3x. They're the same expression, one simplified. So infinite solutions, all real numbers work. Now we're evaluating the expression. So plug in the -6 here, and then simplify. 2 times -6 is -12. And when you do KFC, you're going to add the opposite, so that becomes positive 42. Okay? Here, you're going to square the -3, so that becomes 9 plus -6. And 9 plus -6 is the same as 9 minus 6, which is 3. -1/2 times -6 ends up being positive 3, and 3 plus 9 is 12. And in this case, when you take the square root of 9, most people would answer 3, but actually -3 works as well, because if you take the square root of 9, that's 3, because 3 times 3 equals 9. But also, -3 times -3 also equals 9. So that means you have to take both the positive and the negative square roots of 9. So 3 and -3 are the solutions. The length of a rectangle is 3 times the 3 centimeters. Wait. Length of the rectangle is 3 centimeters more than twice the width. The perimeter is 78 centimeters. All right, so 3 centimeters more than twice the width. So that would be this expression right there. So we know we've got a width and then 3 more than twice the width. So for finding the perimeter, what do we have to do? We have to add up all the sides. So when you add up all the sides, I'm going to add up all the w's. So it turns out we've got 6 w's there. And then add up the constants. The 3 and the 3 make 6. So that means that 6w plus 6 is equal to 78. Well, when you take away 6 from each side, that means that 6w's equals 72. And then what do you multiply times 6 to give you 72 for an answer? That means that the width must be 6 centimeters. So let's go ahead and double that, which is 24, and then add 3, which makes this 27. And if we add up 27 and 27, that's 54. 12 and 12 make 24, and 54 and 24 make 78. If this is kind of fast, well, slow it down a little bit, check the work, listen to what I'm saying, write things down, and if you want to ask me the question in class, I'd be happy to work it out a little bit more slowly. But a lot of you like to get through these videos as quickly as possible, so I'm not making these into 20-minute videos by explaining every last detail. So once again, pause it along the way, listen to what I'm saying, and then go through and show your work and make your corrections if you got the answer wrong. All right, the rule y is equal to 4 minus x squared, calculate the y values. All right, so here we have, let's start with 0. 4 minus 0 squared is 4 minus 0, so your answer is going to be 4. 4 minus 1 squared is 4 minus 1, so your answer is going to be 3. 4 minus 2 squared is going to be 4 minus 4, so your answer is 0. And you notice that when you square the -1, you get 1, just like you had here, so you get the same answer here and the same answer there. And there's sort of like a symmetry to these numbers because this is a quadratic function that creates a parabola graph, which is symmetrical, okay? So once you get those points plotted on the graph, you'll notice that it's forming a U shape. In this case, the U shape is pointing down. Why is it pointing down? Because technically, if I were to rewrite this equation, I could rewrite it as y is equal to -1 times x squared plus 4, right? And when there's a negative number that's the coefficient of the x squared term, that means that your graphs are going to be turned upside down. And the last few problems, being able to multiply and divide fractions. Most of you, I think, are really good with the multiplication. It's super simple. 10 times 5 is 50. 13 times 11 is 143, and a negative times a positive gives you a negative answer. And it turns out that can't be simplified. So multiplying is just going straight across from left to right. But when you're dividing, there's a lot more to the process. So we learned some strategies in 7th grade about, maybe multiplying times the reciprocal, or in some situations, it might be good to get a common denominator. And that's what I'm going to do right now. In fact, I'll do it both ways. I'll do it with the reciprocal and with the common denominator. So let's start with the old-fashioned way of multiplying times the reciprocal. Here you get 80 over 28. And 80 and 28, I believe they have 4 in common. So if you divide the top and the bottom by 4, you get 20 on the top and you get 7 on the bottom. So that's our answer right there. Had you chosen to get a common denominator, this would have become a 16 in our denominator. So that becomes 20 over 16 divided by 7 over 16. And you notice how when you divide 16 by 16, you get 1 for an answer. And anytime, or I'm sorry, you get 1 for a denominator. And whenever you have 1 in the denominator, you really don't need to have that as a denominator. So 20 divided by 7 is 27. So let's get rid of the denominator, and that becomes 20 over 7, just like we had right there. So that absolutely works. So let me actually, let me do this guy right there. Problem D. Common denominator would be 18. So I'm going to take and multiply that times 6, negative 48 over 18, divided by negative 5 over 18. So I'm just going to take negative 48 over negative 5, which becomes a positive because you're taking a negative divided by a negative. And there you go. There's your answer. Write it as a fraction or as a mixed number. 5 goes into 48 9 times, the remainder of 3. And that does it for today's homework. All right, so let's move on to our lesson.
Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark,